presenting this class. So I want to thank them so much. And I like to begin the way our Adi Purusha always begins when he says, let us make a prayer. So I'd like each and every one of you to make this prayer with me, that I will speak only what is Shastra and what is from Guru, and not my own misconceived speculation from my rather monkey-like and foolish mind. And please shower me with your blessings that I may do something that is for the glorification of our wonderful Krishna. And I seek all of your blessings, because I always like to think that all of you are my seniors, because all of you are senior to me in your devotion. So please forgive me my mistakes, and please shower me with your blessings. I'm going to say right up the top, I do teach an asana class, as a lot of you know, right after this. That's why I always say something and disappear. So I will be ending the class about 5 minutes early. I have my other computer set up, so I will jump over there. But let's begin with a little trip to Vrindavan. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Janavarava Girivana Dari, Gopi Janavarava Girivana Dari, Gopi Janavarava Girivana Dari, Yashodanandana Prajajananandana, Yashodanandana Prajajananandana, Yashodanandana Prajajananandana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll go ahead and share my screen, which for some reason is always problematic for me, but there it is. I got it, Manavir, thank you. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 20, verse 17. The first few verses do not have purport, so I'll just read them in English. So this is verse 17. King Dushmanta, who never discharged semen without a result, placed his semen at night in the womb of his queen, Shakuntala, and in the morning he returned to his palace. Thereafter, in due course of time, Shakuntala gave birth to a son. Verse 18. In the forest, Kanva Muni performed all the ritualistic ceremonies concerning the newborn child. Later, the boy became so powerful that he could capture a lion and play with it. Verse 19, Shakuntala, the best of beautiful women, along with her son, whose strength was insurmountable and who was a partial expansion of the supreme Godhead, approached her husband, Dusmanta. And then verse 20, and I will do the Sanskrit here. Yadane jagrahe raja, baraputre vanindidao, shrinvatam sarvabhutanam, kevagaha shrarini, Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Prabhupada Ki Jaya. When the king refused to accept his wife and son, who were both irreproachable, an unembodied voice spoke from the sky as an omen and was heard by everyone present. Maharaj Dusmanta knew that Shakuntala and the boy were his own wife and son, but because they came from outside and were unknown to the citizens, he at first declined to accept them. Shakuntala, however, was so chaste that an omen from the sky declared the truth so that others could hear. When everyone heard from the omen that Shakuntala and her child were truly the king's wife and son, the king gladly accepted them. Om Ganti Muranda Chat Nanjan Shakaya. Takshurmitani Natajmi Shri Guride Namaha. Vanchakopatu Vichak Kripas and Due Vichapatita Nampabani Vaishnavi no Namunamaha. Jai Shri Krishna Shek and the Prabhu Nitananda Shri Vitakarata Shri Vasari Goda Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'll read that again. When the king refused to accept his wife and son, who were both irreproachable, an unembodied voice spoke from the sky as an omen and was heard by everyone present. Wow. An unembodied voice. There is nothing like the Bhagavatam for drama, isn't it? The booming voice. When I hear about this unembodied voice, the Akashvani, which we know, the big Akashvani is coming very soon in the next canto. The voice will say, Kamsa, you are a fool. I think of the actor James Earl Jones on like steroids. That booming voice, yeah, Andrea did too. That booming voice from the sky. And sometimes I wish for myself, when I have a decision to be made or don't know what to do, I sometimes wish I would hear the Akashvani. Or at least the way the good witch from the west or the east, I can't remember, in the Wizard of Oz writes across the sky, surrender, Dorothy. Don't you sometimes wish that Krishna would write, surrender, devotees, surrender unto me. But the Akashvani, this unembodied voice booms out and is heard by everything and everyone. But for my presentation for you today, what I'd like to really speak about is, I think it is my offering, is that there are actually 3 booming voices in that verse. Yes, there is the Akashvani, but then there's also I would say, the booming voice of King Dushmanta and his beautiful wife, Shakuntala. So I'd like to speak about that. And if their time allows, I would then like to speak about how we could possibly be a booming voice for Krishna consciousness, for Krishna. And so at first look at these verses, it would be hard to think that anyone would want to hear anything that King Dushmanta would say, isn't it? Okay, let me hear that again. He plants semen at night, and then, and he's gone. And then when his wife and son show up, you know what? I don't want anything to do with you. But here's the thing, and one has to know a bit of the backstory about King Dushmanta. As we know, King Dushmanta was a very, very great king. And when I was listening to a class about this verse by Baladev Prabhu from the Chaupati Temple, he was saying that it is written that King Dushmanta was such a great king, the grains grew out of the ground without them even being planted. That there was no sin or crime when he ruled. And his kingdom was ever pious. And it was pious because he was the leader, because people were looking to and taking his example. And one day, as we know the story, King Dushmanta was out in the forest and he sees the most beautiful of women. Who was it that recently, I think it was Pravinda Swarup, said that Shakuntala her beauty was so great that the beauty of any woman on earth would make the woman on earth look like a lizard. She was that beautiful. And at once, in a heartbeat, they are in love and they marry very rapidly. And they begin to enjoy what I kind of think of as like honeymoon. But this is where he begins to show his greatness and his care for the people that are under his care. Isn't it that sometimes we see political leaders, we see pictures of them on their yacht or flying away on their vacation. And meanwhile, back at home, their country is in war or famine or burning. King Dusmanta said, wait a minute, I cannot be here enjoying this honeymoon when my people don't even know what's become of me, because it all happened so very fast. I must go home and care for my people. So he's already showing his example of it's not about my selfish wants and desires staying here with this beautiful woman. I have to go back. And he does, in fact, ask his wife to go back with him. But it's all happened in such a hurry. She says that Kandamuni, who is taking care of her, who's raised her, he's gone. She says, I can't just disappear in him. When he comes back, he'll be disturbed. I must stay here. So you go, husband, you go. And you tell everyone about us. And then in time, come back and get me. And so he gives her a ring, his signet ring, and off he goes. Now, I know I've been married a long time, and this ring is now part of my finger. But I do remember when I first got married, I played with it a lot. I rolled it around and I rolled it around and I rolled it around. And still to this day, it reminds me of my wonderful husband. And so can you imagine, there she is thinking about her husband, rolling around that rolling ring. She's so absorbed in love with her husband that she does not see that someone has arrived. Cue the ominous music. Dun, 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 because who has arrived? Durvasa Muni. And as we are all well acquainted, Durvasa Muni, I like to think, has a big old anger management problem, right? And so, as we know, if he is not greeted correctly or properly, he gets a little ticked off. And when a sage like Durvasa Muni gets ticked off, what does he do? Boom, there's a curse. So he says to Shakuntala, whoever it is that you're thinking about with your ring, let them forget you. So we see that Dusmanta, he doesn't disappear like a thief in the night and forget his wife. He forgets his wife because he's under a curse. Now, Shakuntala begs Durvasa Muni to take that curse back. And he relents a little bit. He says it's not forever. It is temporary. And one day he will remember. Well, some time passes and Shakuntala then realizes she's pregnant. So again, King Dusmanta, he didn't know that his wife was pregnant when he left. He did not desert wife and pregnant child. And after a while, Kandamuni comes back and he says that you must go now to your husband. And so she goes, but as she's going with this group of Brahmins who are coming with her, that ring that Dusmanta had given her falls off and is lost. So that by the time she gets to the palace, Dusmanta has no memory because of the curse of anything about her, and she doesn't have the ring to show him. And so think of it, you're a king, and daily people come to ask you for things. And some of them are asking righteously, and some of them are asking not so righteously. It's like, I was thinking, a rich person, they don't know who's coming to them that really needs money. They don't know who it is that's just trying to bilk them. And so to set an example and to show that he's not gullible, he turns this pregnant woman away that he does not know. I sort of think of it very untranscendentally, like those episodes of that horrible show, Jerry Springer. People show up, you're the father of my baby. No. So she goes home and she gives birth to this most wondrous child, right? This wonderful child that we see in the prep board is so strong that he can play with wild animals. And one day, eventually, that ring finds its way into a belly of a fish. And that fish finds itself on a plate of King Dusmanta. And when he sees that ring, he remembers. And again, he shows his greatness here because it's like, it's been such a long time. Forget about it. I don't even know where they are. You know, it's over. But no, he immediately goes to try to rectify the situation. He immediately goes and seeks out Shakuntala, but she's not where he thought she would be. And unbelievably in the forest, he sees this child who has the strength of 1,000 warriors whipped into one. And over dispute with a boar that both of them had hunted, they begin to battle. And King Jasmata, he's a strong guy. He can barely understand how this child, who happens to be his son, is completely beating him. And so he is defeated. But in his defeat, King Jasmata has won. Because in his defeat, he is brought. The little boy brings King Jasmata to his mother, who's, of course, Shakuntala. And the two of them are reunited. And that's where our story now kicks off. And so you can see, without that background information, it could just be, well, like a thief in the night, he impregnated this woman, and then he left, and then she shows up, and now he wants nothing to do with her. But no. And now King Jasmata does something that really speaks to his role as a leader, because he knows the mind of his people, right? We read in the verse that, and in the purport, that he turned her away. Why? Because he knew that his people would reject her because she came from the outside. There's so much we could say about that. That when the case of when we make an us versus them. I was discussing the very first verse of the Bhagavad-Gita just the other day. And what does King Dhritarashtra said? He says, what do my sons and the sons of Pandu do? He separates them. When they are brother cousins, they should be as one. They were both sets of kids were underneath his care, right? So King Jasmata knows the mind of his people. He knows that they come from the outside, that they would reject her, and they know they would look with him if he accepted her. It's like, and who can we trust him? What kind of leader is this, that he just lets anyone, this unknown woman with some child, saying that she's his wife? What is this? And so he does something that on the surface looks so horrible, but his intention is to be a good leader. And we know very, very well what instruction it is he's following, that from the Bhagavad-Gita 3:21, and I'll pull it up so we can all see. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called an acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, scripture, to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures, like the Manu Samhita and similar others, are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard Shastra. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees. And that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king, or the executive head of state, the father, and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. And so in this, setting the example, King Dushmanta is giving the path for all the people underneath his care. And am I the only one that immediately thought of Lord Ram when they read this? I immediately thought of Lord Ram, because that's the example. Here's Lord Ram, of course, is Krishna himself playing king, showing the example of how to be the most dormant king. And what does Lord Ram unbelievably do? Not once, but twice, like King Dushmanta, not once, but twice, sends his wife away. Because of what? To set the example for the people. And I know for a lot of people, what Lord Ram does is really, really problematic, right? And so I like to read from the Krishna Dharma version of the Ramayana, because it's in here that we really see Lord Ram's, my other page marker fell out, really feel Lord Ram's, like his inner conflict and his inner feeling. He says here, Ram, oh, this is when he's sending, when he's asking Sita to walk through the fire after he's rescued her from Ravana. Ram's heart was torn. He deeply wanted to show his love for Sita and to take her back at once. He feared public censure. As a king, he wanted to set the highest example for the people. Sita had been in the house of another man for almost a year. Whatever the circumstances, that would surely be criticized by some of the people. Questions about her chastity might be raised. That would never be acceptable for the wife of an emperor. First line again, his heart was torn. And especially in this particular version of the Ramayana, you really see Ram weeping, crying. And Akiko was in a community group with me when we read this book, and he often falls down to the ground. He's so emotional. This is not an easy thing to do. And then at the end, with the even more inconceivable, when he sends her away, when she's pregnant, it writes here, Ram became pensive. He dismissed the court and asked that Lakshman be summoned. As the prince entered the court, he saw Ram sitting with a downcast expression, seeming like an eclipsed sun. He hurried to his side and asked what was wrong. Ram explained everything, then said, dear brother, the calumny, which I had to look up that word, that means the when people are speaking bad of others, of the people, eats into my very vitals. It can never be tolerated by a virtuous monarch. Surely, I knew that this criticism would ensue, and thus did I test Sita at the time of her return. However, it seems that even the gods have attested to her purity. The citizens are still not satisfied. Alas, surely one's infamy is easily proclaimed in this world. It's not like, yeah, ship her off. I don't care. Why is he doing it? Because he's the example of Dharma. Why is King Dusmanta doing it? Because he is trying to live up and be the example of Dharma. In a book I read, and I can't remember because I would bring it up, it's often said, we look to our leaders, right? But who are leaders but ourselves, really? The leaders come from ourselves. And don't we want a leader to look out more for the people that they are ruling than for themselves, which is what both King Dushmanta, at following the example of Lord Krishna himself, playing the role of a king, on long role, that is what he's doing. That is the example. Whatever great men do, others will certainly follow. In a class about this, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, he talked about a story that we'll be coming to probably about a month in this class from the Bhagavatam, in the 21st chapter of King Rantidev. And King Rantidev, on purpose, took up such great austerities that he fasted for 48 days. And after 48 days, he and his family are given some food finally. But a Brahmin comes. And so he sees, it said that King Rantidev sees within everyone the Atman. He sees that no one is lesser than him because each one is a soul. And he sees that right next to the Atman is Krishna so kindly riding around our bodies as the Para Atman. And so he gives the Brahmana part of his food. And he's about to eat again. But along comes a Shudra, everyday working man. And again, King Rantidev, he sees, not this is someone below me because I'm king. He sees the Atman and the Para Atman. So he gives part of his food. And he's about to eat again, but then comes a man, I love this part, with a lot of dogs. He's some sort of transcendental dog walker. Comes with a lot of dogs. And again, King Rantidev just does not hesitate, gives them in his food. Now, by now, all that King Rantidev has is some water. 48 days, guys, 48 days. He has not eaten. He's given away all his food. And he has just to sip some water. But along comes the lowest of all, a Chandala. the lowest of all. And so without hesitation, because he sees the Atman, Para Atman, in even the lowest of the lowest, he gives his water. And at the end of that beautiful story, and this is what His Holiness Radhanath Swami was saying, and I have it here, I'm not going to bring it up so I can read it. In the 18th verse there, he says, because Rantidev was the king, the chief executive in the state, all the residents of the state became devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan by the king's transcendental association. This is the influence of a pure devotee. This was the booming voice. This is what King Dushmanta and Lord Ram and good leaders do. They're not the Akashvani. They're not the unembodied voice. They are the very embodiment of Dharma. And like it says here, it can spread from the top down. And so we had the booming voice. We have King Dushmanta. And then there's the other person in this, and that's Shakuntala. And she too is a booming voice in her own way. What kind of chastity would there have to be of a person that makes a booming voice and a Kashvani appear? Her chastity was oozing out of her. I forget who said it, but I heard this once. And it goes something like this. What you are is booming, is thundering so loudly above you, I cannot hear what you're saying with your words, who you are. Actions, as our parents always told us, speak louder than words. Her actions, her character speaks so loudly that an Akashvani is drawn. Her voice booms by her actions, by her chastity. And so it manifests this outward booming that she is in fact chaste. And again, I think of the Ramayana. Think of Mother Sita. She did, in fact, was in the house of Lord Ravana, not Lord Ravana, sorry, Ravana, for almost a year. And so many women fell to him in the scene where Hanuman is going from room to room and describes all these ladies like lying all over the place, right? So many women felt him, but she did not. She is so chaste that when Hanuman came, right? When you think of it, the Ramayana could have been over right now, right? Hanuman came, he could have picked her up and leaped right back. But she says, no, Hanuman, don't. You cannot touch me. I can only be touched by my Lord Ram. What chastity. And so her very mood, bhav, we'll say, of chastity, caused that booming voice to come down. And so we have the actual Akashvani, the voice from the sky. We have the actions of King Dushmanta, and we have the chastity of Shakuntala. All of them being voices that boom out. And so I like to then think about, and again, for those that came in late, I teach asana class at 8, so I will be ending the class at 5 minutes till, so I want to make sure I leave time for questions and reflections. But I'd also like to touch on how can we be that booming voice for Krishna consciousness? Well, clearly, there are the things that are Srila Prabhupada set before us. Book distribution, joining our friends that are out there in the streets. And I was thinking, if that's not for you, our Bhakti Devi that's sometimes on this call, like she works in a very corporate environment. She buys a book, just kind of puts it down. She gives it to a coworker. She's even given one to her boss. Maybe they'll read it with her or not, but it is in their presence. There are so many ways that we can distribute. Like, Christmas is coming up. Give somebody a copy of the Higher Taste Cookbook. It's not like you're giving them the Bhagavatam set. I mean, there's also Adi Purusha isn't here today. I seek your blessings, Adi, because he's out doing his good work, of the distribution of prasad. That's certainly, if actions talk louder than words, I dare say that food probably talks louder than action. Having this wonderful food out there, joining him, supporting him. It was so beautiful. On Thanksgiving, he called me first just for being encouraging to him. He's such a beautiful soul. There's also, just going to the Bhakti Center if you're not local, going to your local temple, your spiritual center, right? And giving. I see Akika, she's in the pajama room working away. That tells us so much about who she is. She's booming. She's booming who she is, and she's booming what devotional service is. And isn't it when people come into the Bhakti Center and they see people serving so much? How many times have I heard people say, "What is it with you people? You're so happy serving." Like, I want what you're having. I want what you're having. And so those are external actions, but I'd also like to think about how we can be leaders, like King Dushmant, like Lord Ram, like King Ranti Dev. And so it made me think of the books, where is it? Of the books of Bhakti Tirtha Swami about leadership. And so I'm sharing this quote. He says, if we want to be visionary leaders, we must, of course, learn to recognize them and support them. Visionary leaders have great qualities, which they develop through their interest in values, intuition, and partnership with others. They can bring spiritual culture to our religious and political lives. Mahatma Gandhi once said, and we all know this quote, but I knew it slightly wrong, I realized from reading it here, "I must first be the change I want to see in my world." A visionary leader knows he must lead by example, and his leadership will have a powerful impact on both present and future generations. I love the part where he says we must recognize the leaders and support them, right? And how do they develop it? They develop through their interest in values, intuition, and partnership with others. This makes me think of my favorite verse in the, or a sutra in the Yoga Sutras, which we don't normally bring up in a bhakti context, but it is to be known that the first commentator in the Yoga Sutras was our Vyasadeva, and Professor Edward Bryant, aka Advaita Acharya, I believe is his initiated name. He always says that our understanding really comes from our first commentator, Vyasadeva. So isn't it nice to know that even in Ashtanga Yoga text, actually Vyasadeva, I don't know how he had time to do it with all the stuff he was writing, got in that text too. But it says that when around one steeped fully in peacefulness, all enmity ceases. We can be a leader by our very carriage, by our being steeped in peacefulness, or like Shakuntala in chastity, or like Dushmanta in righteousness. We can be that pebble that's dropped into a pond and then ripples out. We know the story of Lord Chaitanya going into the forest where all the animals were about to kill each other. And there he is chanting, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. And the animals, the natural enemies. Remember, Andrea, when we did that for the kids, the animals, the natural enemies, they come together. Our friend Raghunath Kapo often says that the animals got up and started kissing each other. They were so enlivened, right? We hear about the Buddha putting out his hand and stopping a raging elephant, or is it a tiger? But I think it's an elephant, right? Raging because of his peacefulness. And I'm going to end because it makes me think of the beautiful prayer of St. Francis, which for me, I see the first line of that prayer at least 6 times during the day, if not more, because that shows me how I might be a booming voice for Krishna consciousness. And St. Francis said, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. That prayer is so beautiful. I don't have it memorized, so I always have to have a piece of paper, but I always say, Lord, let me be an instrument of your peace in my prayers. So I love that one day Gauravani, our wonderful kirtan singer, said that he believed that the Maha Mantra was our version of saying this beautiful prayer. So we don't have to know those words. We can just say, as we do, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We thank you for listening. I'm going to stop now and give a couple minutes for any reflections, because as I said, I got to pop off and then get people into downward facing dog on my other computer.
Jamuna Jaya, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's such a wonderful class. So energizing. You're Akashvani, all this cool stuff that you told us. It's unbelievably cool and nourishing. Thank you so much. I'm blown away. I'm blown away.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ananda Bihari. Oh, Vishnu Dev. Oh, thank you. Give my love to the horses. Thank you. It's such an honor.
Hare Krishna, my dear Jamuna Jai, Prabhu. I just wanted to also share that I've heard Rukmini Prabhu quote St. Francis also by saying that he would say, I preach all day, and sometimes I say a few words.
Right. That's so true. Yes, I love that. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, I preach all day, and sometimes I use words. So I love St. Francis. He's so wonderful. Oh, thank you, Pratik. Hey, Jatan, love to the baby. Oh, thank you, Pratik. Oh, thank you, everyone, so much. So I love that we can be a booming voice. Be a booming voice. Was that somebody? Wait, somebody coming on. Okay.
That wasn't me, but I just want to say, your animation is like, well, it's Jamuna Jaya. That says it all, for one thing. Actually, that your last line about that prayer was my favorite. That like Gauravani said, that if you just say the Maha Mantra, you don't have to memorize that prayer. Can you remind me where that prayer came from?
So that's if you look it up, you'll just find it's the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi.
Okay.
Yeah. Just look under that. Yeah.
I think it's just so wonderful that that prayer can be said simply by saying the Maha Mantra. Is really a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your animated class.
Thank you. I swear I don't drink coffee. I swear, guys, really don't.
Oh, I know.
We know that you don't drink Java, you drink Kiva.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. Thank you, Jagadish. Thank you, Jatan. Thank you, Kartik. Thank you, Prati. Thank you, Vishnu Dev. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nanda Vihari, for this opportunity. Please forgive me if I made any boo-boos, errors, and have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Yeah, Jamuna Jaya, you are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, Krishna. Yeah, Jamuna Jaya has to go. She's teaching yoga, right? Dog.
Yeah. They've got to go.
She has to get in her dog position. So, and would anyone like to volunteer and take questions on behalf of Jamuna Jaya? Maybe Akiko.
There we go.
No.
Or Gail or Athena. Okay. All right, Krishna, everybody.
Athena,
bye.
Yeah, let's Athena. So it's your turn to answer questions on behalf of Jamuna Jaya. So if anyone has an intelligent question for Athena, go ahead. We're putting her on the spot today, Athena.
I apologize. I actually have to run as well today. This is the worst timing, so I feel so bad, but I love the opportunity. I would love to. So, but I feel so horrible with the timing, but I'm not sure.
It's all right. It's okay. We understand it's Monday. You know, what a wonderful surcharge of bhakti and illumination from our Jamuna Jaya. It's so wonderful that a person who comes to class every morning gets an opportunity to share Krishna consciousness with us. It's so wonderful. Jamuna Jaya, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Okay, does anybody have any reflection? Anybody that anything that they liked about the class they wanted to share? We have to keep the vibration going until 8 o'clock. It's about keeping the vibration going. This is Brahminical culture. Brahminical means punctual. 8 o'clock means 8 o'clock. So let's keep it going. Please share your reflections, maybe something that you liked about the class. Jaya, you're going first.
That means I've talked 3 times today. I really like the backstory because I really appreciate that she understood how we think, in the sense that I also was thinking, like, who is this king? Like, why is he doing this? And then she provided the whole backstory, which made it like a really great story and exciting, but also like made me be able to empathize with what was going on. So I just wondering, like, why wouldn't they have included that backstory there? Is it just because everybody that would have been reading it before would have known? Or like that was my only question with that.
I don't have an answer. Maybe we have somebody in the audience who has an answer. What comes to mind is everything has a backstory. Everybody has a backstory, and we shouldn't be quick to judge. Oh, how could he do that to her? It has a backstory. So that's I think that's the reason not to judge. Maybe it's not on the surface all the time. Everybody's backstory is not on the surface. We walk around, talk to people, and we don't see what they're going through, and then we judge. Maybe that's a good way. Maybe that's a way to, look at it.
I love your answer, Prabhu. I think that your answer is so important because, especially when we observe bad behavior in someone, it's very unpopular to be tolerant of that person because everybody wants to, because it's unanimous opinion that this is this person has done a bad thing, therefore he's a bad person. But even that person who has unquestionably done something bad has a backstory that would not excuse the bad behavior, but make it understandable why the person did what he did. And so I just feel like in our attempt to be non-judgmental, it is important to recognize that everybody, including ourselves, has a backstory that we may not be aware of, and that can help us, I think, to become more tolerant and forgiving of others and ourselves, actually. So, recognize that there's a backstory, even when it's unpopular to do so, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Thank you, Gail. It was really, really good contribution to this discussion. Thank you, Gail. Kaustuba Prabhu and Raghunath, they're our contemporary bhakti speakers, Srimad Bhagavatam speakers. They have their show, Wisdom of the Sages, highly recommended. And so they often say, if you see this tendency to judge the person who may be doing something that is outright wrong, it's a good exercise to think, I've done this, I've been there. What they're doing, what I'm trying to judge, I've been there, I've done that. So, and that helps a lot.
Actually, and in response to that, I have to say that, there was an incident that happened by a devotee who, nobody would have imagined that he would have been capable of such a thing. And that really sent me into a tailspin too, because I was like, I mean, I know this person, and what he did is so antithetical to my image of him, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And then somehow or other, after several days have passed, I realized that I'm actually that same person,
Yeah.
in terms of what I've done that might be antithetical to, an image, So maybe I didn't do the exact same thing, in this lifetime so far. but
So far.
Yeah, so far. But my actions have been equally egregious and would probably be very shocking to so many people that I could have done such a thing. And so I after several days, I saw that I'm actually not different from this person whose actions I couldn't even wrap my head around. I was like, how is this possible? And yet, that was actually myself.
Yeah, Krishna is so wonderful that he's showing us from within that's you. That's you. And I've observed about my own life, as soon as I judge, oh, this person should have done this, and then they did that, what a failure. 3-4 days, I find myself doing exactly the same thing. And gosh, I feel so terrible. I judged him or her, and then here I am doing the same thing. So Krishna is there. He's watching us very carefully, and he's guiding us very lovingly yet firmly, right?
Yeah. Just one last comment, Prabhu. Just switching the topics. I wanted to tell Jamuna Jaya that I loved her line that actions speak louder than words, but food speaks louder than actions, which was her tribute to Adi Purusha Prabhu, which I want to jump on that bandwagon too. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone who contributed to class, who attended the class, who's been doing this regularly. It's such an inspiration to see all of you every morning here. Thank you very much. Bhima Prabhu has his hand raised. I don't say no to devotees of Bhima Prabhu's caliber. Bhima Prabhu, if you're still around.
Haribo?
Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's a little bit off the mark because you started closing the show, so I'll make it very, very quick. We always have to remember that we are on this ocean, the material ocean. It is for real in the sense that we're a Krishna consciousness and the association of devotees. So we're all like sort of on a little rowboat together. And there is an actual case, many cases, where when people are stranded on an ocean and, you try to collect that fresh water from above, but sometimes it's not enough. And somebody dips his hand into the salt water. And what happens, and this has happened several times for real, that, when somebody starts drinking the salt water, it actually makes you go crazy. And it is the duty of the other people in the boat to try to keep that other person from dipping their hand into the salt water. And that's why we are here, to help each other out, and to also understand that it's the person was thirsty for something, did not have enough of the rain, the mercy falling from heaven above, and went for the water that was right at his feet, or right at within arm's reach. And what happens is that the curtain falls, or the craziness comes, the illusion comes over us, and that we have to feel compassion upon those people, that when they fall away, it is because they're desperately seeking something that they might have had a little more patience to wait until the mercy, the grace that falls, as we say, from above. So that's all I wanted to say in regards to how to view other people, including myself, who find themselves dipping their hands in the ocean. The salty water will make you go crazy. So, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. You're so poetic. Thank you so much. What a wonderful way to wrap up the class. Beautiful poetry. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Krishna is there with all of us at every moment. He sees, he knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. We don't have to be the judge all the time. Krishna is working in everyone's life. So yeah, thank you so much. Come back tomorrow. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jamuna Jaya Devi Prabhu ki jai. Hari Bol.